This is the Sunday stream opening song because the other song is copyrighted. La 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 la. Oh look, here comes Dog Cat Fox.
Hi, Sky.
Good morning, everyone, and welcome to the Sunday stream. The stream I do on Sundays because Sunday is the day to stream on Sundays. Hope you're all doing well on this beautiful Sunday morning, Easter morning. I will not blame you if you are not here live and instead running around chasing eggs and chocolate bunnies with children. That's perfectly fine. But yeah, here we are. And it's a special episode in two different ways. First, the sphere of our universe that I'll be looking at, which I hadn't expected to look at today until I came across this yesterday. And secondly, at the end of the episode, I will be spinning the magic wheel to decide which TED Excellence will be next week's TED Excellence, based on the recommendations from viewers like you on the previous TED Excellence video. I got 6 distinct suggestions, all of which are things that I haven't done before, and as far as I can tell, meet all the criteria I put forward, so we'll figure that out at the end. But before we get to all that, who is joining me this morning, this Sunday morning? Mike R., Funtime Bats, Keever Dam, Mike Savage, Blarg, who else? JMK, J2021, Techno Druid, Swirl Blue, Chicago Mike, Burgid, Jaeger Pony, Rerum Trading, Trading, Lurking Gopher, P Dog Knight, Jamie Melquist, Ryan R., Johnny Hellcat. Good morning to you all. If I missed anybody, I apologize. So yeah, I came across this yesterday and I was very surprised. It had not occurred to me to think about diversity, equity, and inclusion as pertains to the intelligence community. Like, I think this literally deals with the CIA. Now, I grew up being a big fan of, like, spies and stuff. I used to watch all the rerun James Bond movies on TBS. You know, I could go off for quite a while on my thoughts on James Bond over the years, but I'll refrain. But yeah, growing up in the latter years of the Cold War, which may have begun anew recently, but we'll set that aside. I was really into spies and stuff and like gadgets and, you know, the old Mission Impossible TV show, not the original, the 90s reboot of Mission Impossible. Oh boy, the very first episode, if I'm remembering correctly, and I'm happy to be corrected, the very first episode, the bad guy was played by John Delancey of Q fame from Star Trek. And I remember he used like... He got a hotel room underneath his target because he was an assassin. And he had in his luggage a whole bunch of ordinary-looking things that all had devious, real purposes. And one of them was like a tube of, I don't know, like bath balls or ping pong balls or something. And he took them out and he crushes them up, and they're actually C4 explosive, which he uses to try to kill the guy in the hotel room above him. Anyway, I have all these memories. They're probably wrong. It's been like 30, 40 years since I saw that stuff. But anyway, complete tangent. But yes, the Central Intelligence Agency, or the intelligence community at large. The full title of this is Past, Present, and Future of Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion in the American Intelligence Community. Now, if we are going to get a history lesson on how there were practices and or policies in the past of the CIA or other intelligence industries or agencies, I should say, that were either racist or sexist and so on, I would believe you. But it's that equity part that always gets me. And also, the reason that this came up sort of in my mind and I wanted to do it was earlier this week, or maybe it was last week, a report came out from the Department of Defense. Sorry, I'm getting all my departments mixed up. Talking about diversity, equity, and inclusion in the DoD. And there's a section specifically on the issuing of contracts, defense contracts, to different vendors. And it's interesting because they talk about how their decisions in trying to increase diversity, equity, and inclusion dealt with gathering a whole bunch of data on previous vendors that they'd used and vendors they had not used. And then just offhandedly in the middle of a paragraph on like the 75th page of the report or something, it just says, one of the things we may consider is race and ethnicity. I'm paraphrasing. And then they just move on past it. I'm kind of like, one of the things you may consider. So if you consider race and ethnicity just a little bit in your contracting process, isn't that kind of like being a little bit pregnant? Anyway, what does any of that have to do with the intelligence community? I have no idea. But we're about to find out, at least from the perspective of our speakers. Some editorial notes. I did cut out some section at the very beginning where the guy just goes through a whole litany of thank yous for people that arranged this thing to happen. There's that. There was also a long blank space of nobody talking as he tried to get his PowerPoint cards in order, so I cut that out. Otherwise, everything you see here is everything from the original presentation. As usual, we will go for about an hour and a half in real time. The full presentation is 2 hours long. I didn't render the entire 2 hours because that would have taken forever for my computer, and so I only cut it in half. So we're only looking at conceivably the first hour. I'll be surprised if we get through the full first hour. If there is any reason to do a part 2, I'll consider it. But all that being said, as preamble, let's begin. I'll start off with a few seconds for sound test. You guys tell me if you can hear. Holy cats! Brett-eyed. Okay, Brett. Thank you so much, Brett. Happy Easter, Scribe Guy. Well, I do my best to be the best Scribe Guy I can be. Thank you. That is ridiculously generous of you, as always. I don't know what to say other than appreciate it. Hope you have a happy Easter. Hope that this show is worthy of such generosity. And speaking of generosity, please take a look at the GoFundMe's pinned at the top of the chat box for our friends Shady Grin, Anger Illinoisian, and his kitten. They and their loved ones and friends could certainly use your help if you have a couple of bucks to spare, so please take a look at that as well. And I will be, as always, attempting to pay this generosity forward in some way, shape, or form soon. So thank you, Brett, again. But with that, guys, tell me if you can hear this, and then we'll find out more about DEI in the CIA.
It's great to see everyone here joining us today to talk about diversity, equity, and inclusion in the American intelligence community.
You guys hear that all right? Let me know. It's okay, Brett, as far as the spelling goes. Typos are classic human error, and I, too, am an error. No, I'm a human, not an error. Matt Barnes says good. Mike P says sounds good. Chicago Mike says sounds good. 5x5 says JMK. Yes, says Simon Willikins. Good, says Jamie Melquist. Well then, let's go.
Both the past, present, and future.
Mm-hmm.
Our panelists today are all experienced professionals that have lived much of the history we are unpacking.
Good.
In the interest of time, I'm going to direct you to the event webpage for their complete bios, but a little bit about each of them to start.
Okay.
Natalie Colbert is the Belfer Center's Executive Director.
Natalie Colbert, any relation to Stefan?
Before coming to the center, she served in the Central Intelligence Agency for 13 years.
Okay.
Jeff Fields is a non-resident fellow at the Intelligence Project.
Okay.
He currently serves as an assistant special agent in charge, where he leads the counterintelligence branch for the FBI in San Francisco.
Wow.
Lori Rule has served in multiple corporate leadership roles in the CIA, including as Chief Talent Development, Executive Lead for implementation of a 2013 CIA study on women in leadership, and Director of CIA University's Intelligence Language Institute.
Wow.
Kristen Wood is a non-resident fellow at the Intelligence Project. She spent 20 years at the CIA, serving in the director's area and 3 agency directorates, analysis, operations, and digital innovation, and leading a wide variety of the agency missions. Thanks to all of you for joining us today.
Wow. Okay, so we have a panel of certified experts and professionals. I like it already, so we should get a very informed set of input on this.
Our paper and findings on diversity, equity, and inclusion in the American intelligence community is by no means a silver bullet for addressing all of the challenges we have seen on matters of diversity, equity, and inclusion.
Well, you'd have to list for me what you consider to be a challenge. I don't know what that means in regards to your sphere, but hopefully you will tell us. I'm hoping that all of you very experienced professionals in intelligence and details and so on and analysis will give us some active examples Please.
What was the purpose of this paper? Why are we doing this?
Yeah, there you go.
Well, we seek to offer what we think of as a differential diagnosis.
Oh, very house of you. Okay, differential diagnosis.
A perspective from outside Washington that contributes to our understanding where we have been.
Yes.
So we know where we are.
Okay.
Otherwise, it will be impossible to get to where we must be.
Okay. Abstractions aside, I'm waiting for the details. Please get to them.
We made our best effort to study publicly known diversity, equity, and inclusion initiatives over the past 70 plus years.
70 plus years? Okay. Geez, all right. I didn't know it was that big a deal over 70 years.
This does not suggest everything has been done.
No, of course
or
not.
Is ongoing, or nothing is ongoing in the community on these issues.
No, because it is a never-ending conundrum to solve, DEI.
But the vast majority of what is known in the open source.
Mm-hmm.
We identify common historical challenges seen time and again.
Okay.
And offer ideas for the way forward.
Okay.
To solve what we think of as a cyclical and persistent challenge.
Okay. Well, I can't
For
wait.
decades, the leadership of the CIA and later the Office of the Director of National Intelligence have identified diversity as a priority.
Really? For decades? Well, okay. I guess it depends on what you mean by diversity. Because I'd be surprised if the term as used here meant the same thing back then as it's being used today.
To be clear, change has occurred, but slowly, incompletely, and with setbacks.
Okay, well, again, I know I'm jumping ahead here a little bit, but you're going to have to define what the problem was or is in the general sense, and then what the solution or what the ideal outcome looks like. Otherwise, I have no idea what you're talking about.
Start and stop efforts have led to fleeting moments of progress and subsequent reversals. It hasn't always been smooth sailing despite the best of intentions. President Biden's 2021 order emphasizing diversity, equity, inclusion, and accessibility as a national security imperative appear designed to reverse the previous administration.
Okay, well, how does that compare with the Obama administration or the Bush administration or any administration previous? Appeared designed to reverse. Well, what did the previous administration do or implement that this is meant to reverse? You're bringing up these things, and these are just the questions that come to mind. Thank you, Chicago Mike. My bet is that he's not really sitting in a conference room. That's a fake background. Instead, he's in his basement. Oh, Mike, are you telling me that cozy little conference room thing behind him is a facade? Are you telling me that someone in the intelligence community would be deceiving us in some way, shape, or form? How dare you? And P-Dog Knight says, people who can hide in many different color corners. Yes, we must increase diversity for the natural camouflage.
This is not the only example of differences in views between presidential administrations throughout history.
Are you sure? Then why bring it up?
But nevertheless, over the last decade, there has been progress on recognizing diversity as a critical mission imperative.
Ooh.
Successful implementation has remained elusive.
Okay, implementation of what? I know we're just getting at the summary stuff, but these are the questions I'm going to have perpetually as we go. What is the problem, and what is the proposed solution? Thank you, Expo Hotep. Mr. Hammer, I will find that nail yet. You just watch. Yeah. Well, I mean, I don't know. Like I said, this is an area of life I had not ever considered looking for anything regarding diversity, equity, inclusion, like mental health, education, business, the law, those things I've looked at before. This one, I don't know.
But we've also seen bright spots of optimism and potentially good trend lines in the last several years.
Great. Okay.
What did we unpack in our report in history, and how are we thinking about this?
Okay.
We structured it within 3 different eras, all of which share common challenges. The Cold War, or really what often is thought of as the origins of organized American intelligence within government.
Well, yeah, more or less. I mean, there was the Office of Special Services and everything prior to the CIA and all that. Am I getting that right? The OSS? Anyway.
Meaning the bureaucracy and certainly the founding of the CIA.
Yes.
The post-Cold War era,
Uh-huh.
the 1990s. So the end of the Cold War and what happened in the aftermath.
Uh-huh.
And then post 9/11.
Yes.
All three eras shared similar challenges and obstacles that occurred in each respective decades.
Yes.
And they all reflected a shifting security environment with changing requirements and priorities.
Yes.
Leaders pursued initiatives to remedy shortcomings,
Mm-hmm.
but with varying results.
Mm-hmm.
Unfortunately, too often, leaders relearned lessons of preceding eras before recognizing diversity must play an increasing role in the function of American intelligence.
Again, I know, a broken record. What do you mean by diversity? I mean, the intelligence community has had some absolute record epic failures in the last 30 years, let's say. 9/11 not being, I mean, you want to talk about an epic failure. Yeah. Didn't see that coming. Didn't have any, the what was it, the August 6th memo, and Condoleezza Rice still keeping her job after all that. Yeah.
And indeed, throughout much of the history, the challenges seen in the intelligence community workforce mirrored the challenges facing wider American society.
Uh-huh.
But fundamentally, what are we trying to do today as a starting point in a continuing conversation about diversity, equity, and inclusion in the American intelligence community? We're trying to learn from the past, to understand the present, and plan for the future.
Okay, that's all very nice.
We write with high confidence in the report that a diverse IC workforce provides the U.S. with a mission advantage. And we'll hear some examples and background on these very particular issues in the coming hour.
Okay.
But operations and assessments that draw upon different views, backgrounds, languages, and cultures improve outcomes and reflect modern intelligence requirements.
Okay, now, this is the part that I was thinking they were going to go towards, and maybe that's what they're talking about. You're talking about diversity of sources of intelligence, right, from different cultures, different languages, people who know what's going on the ground in a particular part of the world, or can understand things that a foreigner to that part of the world would not. Yes, you want to have a diverse workforce in that regard. So if that's what you mean, that makes all the sense in the world. But I got a feeling it doesn't mean exactly that, because you have equity in there. And I don't know what equity means in the realm of the intelligence community.
More recently, President Biden's senior leadership team has recognized and prioritized diversity as a mission imperative.
Okay. Having people who speak the language and know the ground in different parts of the world is not a new concept. If there's been some great pushback against that idea in the intelligence community over the last 30, 40, 70 years or whatever, maybe that explains some of their drastic failures. I don't know, but is Biden's appearance on the world stage as president suddenly the thing that has changed everything? Because that's what you're making it sound like. But I don't believe that the intelligence community hadn't considered these things until Biden showed up.
Sustainable progress requires a consistent whole of IC approach and beyond.
Okay.
And fundamentally, we believe that to operate in the world as it is, the workforce must reflect the realities of today.
And tomorrow.
And tomorrow.
And tomorrow. Yeah. Okay.
So I'd like to take an opportunity now to go around the table for opening comments and thoughts from our exceptional panelists joining us today.
Yes, please.
And we'll start with Natalie.
Okay.
Great. Thank you, Michael, and the Intel Project Fission, and for congratulations on publishing this report, which, having had an opportunity to read through it, I think highlights, as you mentioned, a lot of the challenges that the IC has faced over the last decades, but also highlights the work that's still ongoing to make those improvements and where, other, fellow members of this panel have played a role in helping to shape that work. So
just as a note, as always, when you have different people with different camera setups and things, your audio quality may vary. I've done my best to, boost the audio overall, but I can't say what different people's outcomes are going to be here.
Happy to be here and share some of my experiences as they are relevant.
Okay.
I think I'll just make a couple of kind of broad comments, at least in terms of where my view and my experience on why it matters has come into play when I reflect back on my time in the IC and where I saw that making a difference in terms of where focus on diversity, equity, and inclusion.
Okay.
So as a former intelligence officer, I spent all of my time as an analyst.
Right.
And so for me, where I saw the mission imperative was on the analytic mission. Primarily, that was my job. And I think here, when you talk in the last slide, actually, about the importance of diversity of background, experience, linguistics, cultural understanding, that's really where I think that played a role in our ability to be more effective as analysts and in understanding and making sense of the world and the threats that we were managing.
Yes. In that regard, that makes all the sense in the world for an intelligence community, multitudes of actual experiences, actual perspectives, and so on, backgrounds, languages. Yes, all of these things make sense. Again, the word I'm waiting to hear some more explanation on and why it is all relevant to this is equity. At least equity as defined currently in the sociological sense of equality of outcome. What does any of that have to do with the intelligence community? And if it doesn't have anything to do with this conversation, why do they include it? Or is that just part of inclusion?
And I can, get into more details later as the conversation evolves, but I think there are two sort of benefits here, both tactical and meta. In terms of tactical, if you're working on a specific team, looking at a specific target or say an adversary in the context of the US national security priorities, having colleagues who had a personal understanding of the history, of the politics, of the linguistic nuances of that region made our analysis that much more nuanced and made our ability to inform policymaker options more specific or relevant, as opposed to just having kind of a US-centric only view.
Yes, exactly. Okay. So, again, knowledge, experience, actual meritorious elements of someone's ability to bring something to the table and analyzing a situation. Yeah, that's perfectly fine. That makes all the sense in the world. That's not what DEI is and is being applied as in other parts of, life. So far, this makes all the sense. But why are they using DEI, that specific chain of words?
On a meta level, I think it also helps to, over time, shift the lens, certainly within the analytic cadre, how we approach dynamics, how we view other threat actors or other what we would consider adversaries from the US perspective. What I mean by that is, say, we view Iran as an adversary. It's not the whole country of Iran. It's not all Iranian people everywhere. It's in this case, let's say the regime.
Yes.
And I think having colleagues who come from those backgrounds or who can reflect on that personal level, I think changes the way you are as a colleague and how you view and relate to those issues and how you come to make a more specific view of who actually is your adversary and what are the opportunities there, as opposed to blanket statements and blanket views about whole communities, cultures, or regions.
Wait a second. Okay. Again, I'm not meaning to, this is not to downplay the value of someone who knows the culture, territory, language of whatever you're looking at, but seriously, the idea that when nation states are moving one against the other, that they're moving more against the people controlling the nation state and not the entire population of the nation state. You need someone who knows anything about Iran to tell you that not everybody in Russia was our enemy during the Cold War. It had more to do with the people at the top. not the strongest argument.
Beyond the analytic mission, the only other two things I would highlight in big terms is on personnel management. So I was also an analytic manager, and the two areas I would highlight there are retention and inclusion as a goal to maximizing use of your talent.
I hope she explains.
So on retention, and I can get into this later too as we get into the discussion.
Okay.
I think early on in my time there, I underestimated the importance of any officer being able to, quote, see themselves in the myriad roles and opportunities that are available in the IC.
Oh no, see yourself. Yeah, I can't imagine that I could ever achieve something unless someone who has my same genitals, skin color, whatever, is also in that thing, especially in as cloistered and as specified an industry as intelligence. Well, then I guess, how did you achieve anything that you achieved? Did you see people who looked exactly like you ahead of time? How does anybody achieve anything beyond their current situation? They have to see someone who, quote unquote, looks like them. That is such a poor argument or complaint.
But that became clearer to me, especially as I came into management, how important it is for people to be able to see and identify other people in whatever lens, whether it's gender or race or ethnicity or linguistic, whatever piece of their identity they felt was important to understanding the pathway that they could make. That is really important, I think, as a tool of retention. And then finally, on the inclusivity piece, this is literally just on how we build an inclusive culture and environment. And that is key to maximizing use of talent. So as a team manager, right, if you have 10 people and say you're more aware of things like neurodiversity, how that affects a person's work environment, or other aspects of their identity, introverts, etc., it literally allows you to go from using 5 out of 10 of your people to their maximum capability to 10 out of 10 once you have a better appreciation and understanding for the diversity that they bring to work and how that helps, how you can be a better manager in leveraging their talents and skills.
So being an effective leader means knowing the strengths and weaknesses of those operating beneath you and leveraging them to get the most as you can out of them. Golly, what an amazing, innovative concept. I can't believe it's never been thought of before. Let me ask you something. If by some chance, let's just say that I was in the intelligence community and I held a position of leadership and I saw that I looked exactly like everybody else in my same level of management, let's say. And I believed, as you believe, it would be the morally correct thing for me to do then to quit, remove myself from the equation, and elect or appoint someone to my position who looked a particular way. Not possessed skills or anything that might be commensurate to the position I was vacating, but specifically looked a particular way because I want to make sure that I inspire people who look like them to believe that they too could achieve such a level of management, right? That would be a correct thing to do. And in your case, obviously, if someone else was to come up to a position of authority, you would want to make sure that they knew that their belief in your appearance would mean they too could rise in the ranks. So, okay, I don't know where I'm going with that, but then I try to follow this chain of logic and it just kind of...
So I'll leave it there, but those are kind of the 3 ways that I really see this impacting day to day in the mission.
Okay, well, thank you for that. Thank you, Gay Rascal. I'm here. You may begin now. By the way, DEI and intelligence sounds like a contradictions in terms to me. Yeah, military intelligence. Oxymoron, right? All right, well, anyway, so first pass at the apple here. We have looks like you and neurodiversity, which is just a fancy way of saying people think differently than other people. Half the time when I hear it, but that's what I think of. Neurodiversity. It's like, anyway.
Oh, fantastic! Thank you very much, Natalie. Kristen, over to you. I think mute.
Yeah, don't mute yourself, Kristen.
It would not be a Zoom call without one of those. So
Yay.
I'm the only one. Thank you so much. So I'll just keep my remarks brief at this section.
Okay.
But I think as your paper notes really, it's vital, this focus on diversity, equity, and inclusion.
Yes.
It's not just language, and it's not just political rubric.
Okay, so it's not those things that would be, at least on the surface, vitally necessary for an intelligence community and the tools that they need to do their work. Okay, what else is it?
But it really is the fabric of how we are going to win in the war for the future.
Wow. Okay, the fabric of how we're going to win the war for the future. Okay, well, so that's not language and political rubric. Well, what else is it?
In the battle for the future, to define ourselves, to protect our own country.
How?
And I think one of the things that I've noticed is over 30 years
Yes.
of being involved in the national security space, in analysis, operations, open source, in a variety of different positions, is
Yes.
that we are ourselves becoming more diverse as a nation.
Becoming. Yeah, because as you know, 50 years ago, if you went from California to Texas, everything was exactly the same. If you went from Texas to Maine, everything was exactly the same. The food was the same, the people were the same, the accents were the same. Yes, only now are we becoming a diverse country. Only now. It's not an ongoing evolution. It hasn't been happening since the founding. No, only now.
And so over that time, we have brought in people from many other nations.
Oh, have you? Into the intelligence community in order to understand the rest of the world? Yeah, that wasn't happening. Okay, maybe I just have a very glorified sense of how the intelligence community has worked for the better part of my life. But Keeverdam, thank you so much. Lexi's here. Is that like a state of being? Like Lexi's here. Like, okay. And she just says, "Rrr." Hi, Lexi. I guess we can begin now, huh? I suppose. Sort of. Okay.
What it used to be that if someone was gay or lesbian, they absolutely could not talk about that.
This is true. This is true. Don't ask, don't tell. It's true. That was bad, and that has changed. I agree with you on that.
And I think of over the last 30 years, the openness with which those kinds of conversations are now able to happen.
What does someone's personal sexual attitude have to do with their work in intelligence? Okay, this is not me saying that it was a good thing that these things were basically made illegal or a fireable offense. I'm asking, setting that aside, what does someone's personal sexual preferences have to do with their work in the intelligence community? That seems to me a complete non sequitur.
Across racial lines, across gender lines, across sexuality, across various ethnic groups.
Okay, then tell me, how does your sex life affect your work? All right, what does your sex life have to do with national security? I mean, short of you getting caught in a honeypot trap or something and being blackmailed in some way, shape, or form, what do your sexual preferences have to do with the quality and security of my life as an American? I need to know. I need you to tell me in detail about your sex life. Now that you've said that is a necessary component of our mission to fight the war of the future, well, then obviously you must disclose that to me right now as a taxpayer, right? Or is it possible that who you sleep with is your business and has nothing to do with your ability to do your job? Unless you're telling us that your preferences have something to do with your ability to do your job. And at that point, are you then discriminating on the quality of someone's work or potential on the basis of who they sleep with? You tell me. This is where my mind goes when this kind of thing comes up. Like, okay, you need to explain to me how that is relevant.
And all of that makes our nation richer.
Yes. What does that have to do with affecting your job as an intelligence analyst?
Richer dialogue, richer understanding of one another. And it's not to say that it's perfect, but I think mirroring some of the challenges we've seen publicly across private sector, across academic institutions, across our neighborhoods and communities.
Yeah, many of which I've looked at in the past. Yes. What does this have to do with anything?
The intelligence community has faced those kinds of challenges as well.
And
it's an insular organization, right? And in most cases,
yes.
to be a part of the intelligence community, you have to have a security clearance, and you need to work in an environment where you walk into a building and you have to be cleared into the building, and you're isolated. You're not not isolated. You're in a group like yourselves.
Yeah, you're isolated. Well, you're not isolated. You're just locked into a giant concrete box with a bunch of people who also have the same or similar jobs as you. It's not isolation. It's just what is it again?
And so that also has taken place in a little bit of different pace, maybe a little slower in some places, not perfect. But I think there's widespread recognition among the leadership team, both at the DNI level and the director of CIA level, Lloyd Austin across the IC, that this is a vital imperative.
What is the imperative? Okay, outside of having people who know languages, cultures, customs, have some idea of on-the-ground intelligence necessary for, well, our intelligence, what does any of that have to do with someone who looks like me in management or what someone does in their private lives? I'm waiting for that part.
And the programs and opportunities that are being put in place for that to happen are really key. And we can talk about that in a little bit.
Okay.
But I think something that Natalie was saying earlier is more perspectives, the better.
Yes. Perspectives, informed perspectives, experiences, things of meritorious content. Yes, that all makes sense. You're mentioning things that don't.
And, in the olden days, it used to be that I'll pick the analysis side of the house, that the political analysts thought they were the smartest.
Yes.
Some political analysts thought they were smartest.
Oh, some? How many is some?
And the military analysts didn't really know much because they just focused on the military. And the economic analysts, well, they were different too. And, well, forget the terrorism analysts, right? And so it's only when you get all those people in a room.
So are you saying that communication amongst the different parts of the intelligence community is a benefit rather than compartmentalizing everything? Wow, I can't handle such brilliance. Tell me more.
Where you can see a bigger perspective. Now you add in people with different experiences where they grew up, different language backgrounds, different identities in a variety of different ways.
No. You had me up until the identities part. What do you mean by identities? Okay, everything there sounded like it was important or could be important. It's all a matter of someone's possessed knowledge of something. And you are in the intelligence community. Great. As soon as you start glossing things over with their multiple identities, like, unless you're talking about a stack of different passports with different names on them, I don't know what you mean in relation to the intelligence community.
And you're only enriching the dialogue. So I think it's a mirror of what we're seeing in society. It's not perfect, but
everybody's got to say, we still have a long way to go. It's not perfect, whatever it is.
I think everyone who is in that community now knows that and is working on developing it and moving it forward. So I look forward to continue the conversation, and I'm just really glad to have the opportunity to do this. And thank you so much for tackling this issue today.
Okay.
Thank you so much, Chris, and really appreciate your insight on this. Jeff, we'll turn to you next for opening comments.
Okay, Jeff.
Thank you, Michael. I would just like to say, I think, and I believe your paper kind of highlights what one of the conclusions that I've come to is that, good intentions aren't enough, right? It's not like there's this secret society of Protestant white men who have been deliberately trying to keep other folks out. There have been some well-intentioned efforts, but I think, as we all know, right, especially in our culture, in the intelligence community, culture will always bend policy, will always bend regulations, will always bend law, even values to its will, right? But culture isn't like this. Like sometimes I feel like, especially in the last 20 years of the counterterrorism effort, is, we feel like we treat culture as this immutable reality that we have no power to change. And
do we? I don't know. I seem to recall something about the Constitution, the mechanisms therein, and the amendments thereof that have gradually changed our culture over time. But maybe that's just me in thinking that no culture is immutable, because I know that the American culture has changed. So, yeah.
And that's BS, right? Like,
yeah, no, it is BS. Anybody who thinks that culture is immutable has not even the foggiest concept of basic history. The changing of laws as just one example. So, yeah, you're right. Culture is not immutable. Where are we going with this?
People create culture
individually,
right? Like we have the power to say, hey, these are the values we want to espouse and to perpetuate.
Yes.
And we have the ability to create a culture that, together with policy and new generation of folks who have a different perspective, to really have long-standing change. And
yes, you can change culture, you can change policy, and so on. The question is whether or not things are being changed for the better. The quality of that change is what's in question, not that someone can change culture. So, again, the question is, what is the problem? What is the proposed solution? And what does the ideal outcome look like? I can't assess anything of what you're saying until I have some more examples. And I'm just saying you and the royal you, because all of our speakers so far have been very, very vague.
Even if you are not a true believer, and even if you don't do it because it's the right thing to do.
Do what?
Even just from a strategic, Sun Tzu point of view, Xi Jinping, right? Putin.
Yeah.
Kim Jong-un, they can't go to the West Indian neighborhood in Brooklyn to recruit. They can't go to the Korean neighborhood in Seattle and recruit. They can't go to the Hill Country of West Virginia, to the Bayou in New Orleans, or to a Native American reservation in Montana.
Are you sure about that? Because I've seen stories over and over again of industry or intelligence or government professionals in different parts of this country being caught working for other governments. I mean, don't get me wrong. I'm pretty sure that Kim Jong-un would have a much harder time trying to recruit an asset in Middle America than, say, maybe Putin or Xi Jinping or anything else. But if you deny the possibility, aren't you limiting your own perspective? And aren't you leaving the possibility open for a threat? I have absolutely no experience in actual, espionage, intelligence, governmental. That just seems to me closing off options or possibilities is not a smart way to go. Thank you, John Miller. So how does this actually help gather intelligence? Yeah, that's the other part too. I'm waiting to hear. Like how have outcomes improved with these efforts? How do you draw a line one to the other? Now, again, if they're talking about, we didn't have anybody who spoke Farsi in our counterterrorism unit until this date, and then all of a sudden all these other pathways and things opened up to us, I can believe that, and that would make all the sense in the world. But I haven't heard something like that yet, except sort of talking abstractly, which, again, just seems like a no-duh proposal. So, anyway.
That is like our key strategic advantage over our adversaries.
What? The fact that you think that other countries can't create assets in this country? You think Putin, Xi Jinping, specifically those two, gigantic governments with a lot of money and a lot of cultural connections around the world, you think they can't develop assets in different places in this country? Really? If you really believe that, okay.
Our technology and our money alone is not going to secure success and victory when it comes to within the national security realm.
Yeah.
Our ability to identify, to connect, to recruit, elevate, and retain that talent from America is our key strategic advantage over our adversaries. And I don't understand why, even for the people who don't just feel comfortable with people like me being in their midst, why they wouldn't even just for the purpose of America maintaining or being able to have our military superiority and whatnot would see that, right? It seems like almost like the logical conclusion. So like,
okay, I'm having a hard time figuring out where this is going. People like you. Okay, well, I don't know anything about you. Okay, I don't. I mean, he mentioned the backgrounds of the speakers at the beginning, but honestly, I have forgotten who is or had what background or whatever. But aside from that, what do you bring to the table? What knowledge, experience, background, linguistics, culture? I don't know. People. What do you mean, people like you?
I forget the individual said it, but it's diversity is not a nice to have; it's a need to have.
Define diversity. You guys keep wavering between this very logical conclusion that, yes, we need people from around the world or with knowledge of different parts of the world in order to have an effective intelligence apparatus. Yeah, that makes all the sense. So what are you talking about specifically?
I think tactically we get it. For those of us who have been operating around the world, we get it, right? Because there's just some regions in the world where if you don't have someone who has that cultural familiarity, language skills, you just aren't going to be able to operate.
I'm not part of the intelligence community, and I understand that. I understood that when I was 12 watching Bond movies, for crying out loud. I mean, it is a terrible and goofy example now, right? But if you go back to the old Bond movie, You Only Live Twice. Okay, part of that movie is James Bond. It's so fucking cringy now. But James Bond, quote unquote, becoming Japanese. He had to learn Japanese culture and train with the Japanese ninjas and get married to a Japanese woman. The whole idea of having some understanding of the culture in which you're operating in and having contacts from that culture to advise you as to what to do or what to look out for, that's not... What are you... I don't know where we are at now.
But I think while in my experience in the last 20 years, I have seen that on the tactical side, especially in the counterterrorism realm, where you do have teams of integrated with women and different gender identities. And
what does genitals define about someone's ability to be an effective intelligence operative or analyst? Right. Other gender identities. Okay, setting aside whatever you're talking about, what does any of that have to do or say about someone's ability to be an effective intelligence analyst, operative, manager, whatever? You have not explained that. None of you.
and cultural backgrounds.
Cultural backgrounds is different. Cultural backgrounds is something that is tangible, right? Somewhere I grew up, a language that I know, right? Traditions that I have taken part in personally, parts of the world I have lived in personally. Those are elements of a personal experience that are relevant to this. What does who I like to sleep with, or my genitals specifically, or how I define my genitals, what does any of that have to do with being relevant to this?
There's like a point where as you get into senior leadership, it becomes like really homogenous.
Does it? So everybody in senior leadership has the same cultural background. They have the same experiences. They have the same knowledge. They all have the same linguistic ability. Really? Well, if you say so.
And so I think when I talk about good intentions aren't enough, it's incumbent upon the leadership to say, okay, it's been 10 years. Why is it that every time we sit down at this table, everyone looks alike?
All right. Well, we finally, I mean, as if we didn't already get to it a little bit with the lady talking about see themselves. Here we are. All right. Well, so that's the problem. That's the problem. Everybody, quote unquote, looks alike. All right. Well, what is your proposed solution to solve for that problem in the intelligence community?
And it's that constant reassessment to say, are we doing enough to reach people where they are? Because I think a lot of times...
What? Reach people where they are? Either someone has the skills and experience necessary to rise to senior leadership in the intelligence community, or they do not. That'd be my only criteria. If you have some evidence that there is an active racist and or sexist policy taking place in restricting people from achieving top spots in intelligence, by all means, lay it out. Otherwise, your complaint doesn't make any sense unless you're going to set aside merit and worry only about aesthetics. And if you're worrying only about aesthetics, there's a word for that, or a couple of words, depending on what we're talking about.
We want to take the easy way out, and we're creating an initiative that targets the LGBTQ plus community, or that targets the Black community.
Targets them for what? What are you talking about? Recruitment? I mean, is there an intelligence advantage to having someone from the LGBTQ plus community on staff? What?
And by that, I mean, they'll go to HBCUs.
Historically Black colleges and universities,
Well, only 20% of Black people in America go to HBCUs.
Okay, well, where else shall this filtered recruiting apparatus go?
So you're not even touching 80% of the folks, right? So
the folks, I guess it depends on what the needs of the intelligence community are. Do you want academics who speak several languages? Do you go to university? Or do you just randomly walk down a street somewhere in Chicago? What are you talking about?
That's kind of like, we kind of get lazy and not appreciate that every American has a distinctly unique experience.
Really? Every American has a distinctly unique experience? Oh, does that preclude everybody in senior leadership? Because I just heard a second ago that everybody looks the same as being equated to everybody there must obviously operate the same. Oh, but every American has a unique experience. Oh, well, gosh, a homogenized experience versus a unique experience. But it's all based on aesthetics. Okay. Where are you going and why are you recruiting people? For what purpose? Just thank you, P-Dog Knight. You would have to groom POC to be agents from a very young age. Oh, wait, I don't think I'm allowed to say that word. I have no idea what we are talking about now. Maybe I've just been ruined by spy movies and spy novels and things about the creation of an asset, right? Or the recruitment of an analyst or whatever. I think of movies like The Good Shepherd or Spy Games or Body of Lies. Now, the quality of these movies can vary depending on what you're looking at. Body of Lies isn't exactly a great, and those are just a couple. There's hundreds and hundreds of spy movies. When I think about how I think that real intelligence operations and things would have to work, those are sort of the concepts I go to. When I think about like Tom Clancy novels, Cardinal of the Kremlin, developing assets, slowly bringing someone in without them even knowing they're being recruited. Or Breach. That's a really good movie. Breach, with Chris Cooper. Yeah, watching some of these movies and how they depict real stories of how people got turned, or Falcon and the Snowman. Falcon and the Snowman is a good one too. Not Falcon and the Winter Soldier. No, Falcon and the Snowman. But these things happen because a particular government has a particular need, or someone has information that the government can take advantage of. Okay, when you're talking about we're only going to historically black colleges and universities, but that's not where all the people of a specific color are. Well, are you hiring for ability and talent, or are you hiring for color? Because if you're hiring for color, I mean, there can be some elements that are necessary for that, right? If you're going to have an asset embedded in a specific country or community or something, yeah, that can make a big difference. In the intelligence world, some of those aesthetic things do have utility. I'm not going to deny that. But if that's not what our speaker is talking about, then I don't know what he is talking about. Thank you, Chicago Mike. Wasn't Emma Peel and John Steed considered equals? Yeah, the original Avengers show. Yeah, Emma Peel got one over on John Steed more than a few times. And oftentimes she was leading everything around. And, man, Emma Peel, the original Emma Peel. Oh, anyway, yeah, that was a very progressive show for its time. Emma Peel kicking ass all over the place. Still kind of goofy, still kind of Batman 1960s, but yeah.
Right. And
right.
We have to do the work to meet those people, the younger generation, to meet them where they are.
Do the work, meet them where they are. Why? What utility do they serve in the intelligence community? If you need an expert on Russian history, okay, where do you go to find someone who is an expert on Russian history? If you need an expert in entomology, right? Or just the Russian language or the Egyptian language, do you find someone who knows how to do that stuff or has an education in those things? What are you talking about? Because in my mind, when I think of the intelligence community, I think of what people know, what people can do for the most part. If you have an active operative in a part of the world, obviously that person needs to know how to function and move through that part of the world effectively without standing out like a sore thumb. And so, yes, maybe their skin color does come into account at that point. As I said, there is utility in the intelligence community for aesthetics. It can be very important. But unless you're talking about field operatives, what does this have to do with anything?
At eye level, to communicate with them in the means that they communicate on the platforms that they consume the media on, right?
What?
And not take the easy way out and go out to the communities, go out to these neighborhoods, go out to these regions of the country and say, hey, we want to create a space, even if we don't have it now, we want you to help us create a space for you, for people who think like you, and live like you within the intelligence community.
What? Okay, as I say, I'm not an intelligence professional. I don't know what he's referring to. It's all very abstract. It just sounds a little, it confuses me, let's just say.
And I'll leave it at that because I know there's a lot of really good stuff we're probably going to get into over the course of the next hour and a half. But those are just two key things, in terms of culture and good intentions is not enough. It's got to be more deliberate.
Buzz phrase, abstract concept, buzz phrase, abstract concept. Okay.
Fantastic, Jeff. Thank you very much.
Yeah, fantastic. Yeah, saying a lot of words without saying anything. I guess that can be an asset in the intelligence community.
Lori.
Yes. So thank you for the
Whoa.
opportunity to serve on the panel, and congratulations again on the paper. And yes, Natalie. Yes, Kristen. Yes.
Calm down, lady. My eardrums. I'm going to have to turn the volume down here in a second because actually I'm going to do that right now because that is, yeah.
Yes, Jeff. You all have made such excellent points, and I agree 100%. I will just add a few things that hopefully build on that. As I was reflecting a little bit of why it matters myself, at the end of the day, intelligence work is all about human beings.
Yeah. Wow. Okay. That's what you drew from the previous speakers. Oh, okay. You know what? I guess you're right. Unless we're talking about like a drug sniffing dog or something, or I don't know. You need an entomology expert to be able to figure out the time of death of someone after the larvae have been implanted in a corpse or something. I mean, yeah, it does require human beings, I suppose, one way, shape, or form.
And relationships. And it doesn't matter what int you're in.
Yes.
And it's about understanding the mindset of our adversaries.
Yes.
And, we're trying to understand Putin's mindset today with the whole Ukraine situation, for example.
Yeah, I'm sure that no one has tried to understand Putin's mindset up until the Ukraine situation. There haven't been people analyzing Putin and keeping tabs on his movements and his processes and everything for decades prior to this. I'm sure only now.
And it's all about interacting, collaborating, cooperating with our allies as well.
Oh, you don't say. Gosh, understanding our adversaries and cooperating with our allies. Gosh. And also assessing our allies for being future threats should they turn to the other side or something. Very Batman Justice League, isn't it?
So in order to do that, again, like Jeff, I don't know why people would not want to pull on diversity of thought.
You're right. It would be weird for someone to not want to pull on diversity of thought in the intelligence community, but that's not what has been brought up thus far, has it?
Backgrounds,
yes.
Experience.
Yes, experience, things of personal knowledge and skill and merit. Yes, those things make all the sense in the world. Now, what about the other stuff?
It is so rich here in America to help set us up for success to be able to tackle what I would say are truly, at least since I started 30 some years ago at the agency, increasingly complex and interconnected intelligence challenges.
Really?
We often say people are our greatest asset, so let's live that.
Do you have an option otherwise? Like, what? Okay, all right.
And then the second thing I would say is, it's hard to visualize those sometimes. I think that's part of the challenge, right? All of you mentioned language and culture, and language and culture are near and dear to my heart, and that's kind of a no-brainer. We get that.
Do you? Because it sure sounded like it was brand new news to the last couple of speakers. But okay, yes, I hope you get that. I hope that's a no-brainer. Yes, okay.
You have to understand, the country that you're serving in. You have to maybe speak the language or what have you.
Yeah.
It's sometimes harder to visualize where some elements of diversity, and Natalie, you mentioned meta, and that made me think a little bit. It's that sort of more nuanced underlying. For example, I had an aha moment once. I was listening to a presentation by a woman with a disability. She was unable to walk. And
I can't wait to hear where this is going.
She was talking about her experiences, her life experiences have enabled her to be a better problem solver because she always has to plan, think ahead. How is she going to navigate literally through a situation? And she's more creative in thinking about how to do that than maybe somebody who just takes it for granted that they can walk across the street.
Being a good problem solver doesn't necessarily mean that your method of problem solving is any different than anybody else's, just having to be applied to different circumstances. Yeah. How can I be creative to get around this obstacle? Yeah, okay, all right, yes, I am sure that people who have disabilities have a very different way of looking at the world physically and otherwise. Yes, okay. Better problem solver, better than what? More creative than what?
So to me, it's kind of a no-brainer that why wouldn't we want to both incorporate more diversity, be inclusive and optimize that talent, and make sure that we all have a level playing field then with access to opportunity.
That's not what people have been talking about, has it been? They keep throwing in things that make the perfect sense in the world that are no-brainers: language, culture, experience on the ground, etc. Yes, these things make all the sense. But then they throw in the aesthetic part. They throw in the who I like to sleep with part. They throw in the genitals part. I'm still waiting to hear how any of that inherently informs or improves the intelligence community all by itself. It's like there's some Trojan horsing going on here. We're talking about things that make all the sense in the world for the intelligence community, but we have to do better about how everybody looks at the top.
Diversity, inclusion, and I love the addition of equity.
What do you mean by equity? Okay, I'm just diversity. Yeah, can mean a lot. What do you mean by equity? Equality of outcome. What equality of outcomes are you looking for in the intelligence community?
I'll stop there.
Okay.
Well, thank you, Lori, and thanks to all of our panelists for just a phenomenal round of opening comments. And
is that really phenomenal? I mean, some more than others, but okay.
I'm trying to contain my excitement here and stay on track, but it's just such an amazing array of.
I can see that you're working very hard to contain your excitement. I'm sure you're quite a wild child.
Comments that I think do speak to what it is we're trying to unpack here.
Yes.
And I really appreciate that. And we'll definitely return to some of the themes in further discussion.
Okay.
So I do want to turn now. Lindsay and I are going to walk through some of our key findings and takeaways from our report.
Okay.
And one of the, I think, pieces of good news in a way is that we've seen throughout history, or rather over the course of history, that diversity, as Jeff talked about, and Kristen and Natalie and Lori.
I don't know that they were all talking about the same kind of diversity, or that you are either, but okay.
The idea of it being a mission imperative has very much picked up solid ground and is now, without a doubt, central in the minds of key leaders in the community. And we see this in some of the comments going back to the post-Cold War, even late Cold War, we saw some of this, but a lot more certainly, starting with Director George Tenet, talked about the need for demographic diversity to really penetrate our toughest targets around the world.
Wow, I'm sure such things had never been considered prior to Tenet being in office. I mean, I'm right back to the previous speaker. It's a no-brainer. Yeah, no, I've had these concepts in my mind since I was a child, and those same concepts have been presented as far back as old James Bond movies.
As Jeff talked about a little bit. And then Mike Hayden, who was director of Central Intelligence Agency in 2006, also acknowledged that, to Lori's superb points that she just talked about, is that you do need these capabilities and functions in your workforce.
Capabilities.
And when you don't have that, you often run into problems, and indeed it can result in impact a failure of intelligence to provide things like strategic warning.
Wow. So if you lack information in the intelligence community, you might come to a wrong conclusion or be ambushed by something happening because you didn't have all the information you needed. Wow. Tell me more.
And what I think was critical about Hayden's point here, and this has picked up more and more as we move forward, is that the U.S. needs to leverage its greatest asset, as Jeff talked about, its people.
People who possess things that are vital to intelligence. Like I would be a terrible addition to the intelligence community in that I don't possess any great knowledge of any other nations or languages or anything. I'm just an average Joe, more or less. Okay? And so is 99% of the population.
The United States is a unique, some call it an experiment.
Some call it experiment? What? It's always been some?
but it's certainly in many ways a melting pot of so many cultures.
You don't say. Well, did you just come up with that phrase all by yourself?
Backgrounds, experiences, and people from everywhere.
Yes.
And that's not the case for some of our toughest competitors necessarily.
Okay, so are they inherently losing because they lack that? I mean, is China on lower footing than us on the intelligence community because of their quote unquote lack of diversity? I mean, I don't know. I'm asking that question genuinely. Would you assess China's intelligence apparatus is inherently weaker because of their inherent lack of population demographic diversity? I mean, that's what is being proposed here, right?
So since 2007, diversity has been a strategic mission imperative. So just to understand some of the strategic approaches by key parts of the IC, the ODNI has looked at it as a strategic mission imperative.
What does that mean? Looking at it as a strategic mission imperative. Okay, so how does that change something that wasn't seen as that to something that's seen as that? What is that done? What does that put into motion?
Since at least 2007.
Okay.
2009, ICD.
So wait, only since 2007 has the intelligence community considered the fact that having people from different countries, different cultures, and who possess different languages and experiences has been important to the effectiveness of the intelligence community. Only since 2007. Really? I mean, if that's true, holy cow. But I have a hard time believing that is true.
110, that's an intelligence community directive, promoted diversity in the IC as a mission critical imperative.
What? Well, it's not just a strategic mission imperative, it's a mission critical imperative. It took us 2 years to realize that, but okay.
Recruitment, development, retention of minorities, women, persons with disabilities, individuals of various backgrounds, cultures, generations, perspectives, and ideas, among others.
All right, well, tell me, where's the racial test? Where's the gender test? Where's the disability test in this process? I mean, again, in the intelligence community, depending on what we're talking about, I could understand very fine levels of discrimination. I could. Like I say, if you're going to put someone as an asset into China, you might want to find somebody who's Chinese. That makes all the sense in the world. It's sort of like recruiting actors for particular roles in stories that reflect different people and characters that are of specified elements. You know, a female who's Russian. You probably want to find an actress who can pull off a Russian accent, that kind of thing. This all makes sense to me, right? But that's not what these guys were talking about, the previous speakers. They're talking about the appearance of the people in charge of things. Being able to see yourself in someone else in a various role of the intelligence community. You're not talking about the utility of someone's various elements. That's not what they were talking about. If you're talking about the utility depending on the needs of the intelligence community, well, okay, I could buy that. That doesn't sound like what's being talked about, though.
So you see this now codified within sort of the execution and day-to-day of the IC. It captured the necessity of diversity, and it was a commitment to accountability through the development and implementation of performance measures.
I don't know what any of that means. Unless you're going to tell me that there were specific policies that said, we shall not bring into the analysis pool people who look like this, or this type of person or something. Unless you're going to tell me that those were stated and implemented policies that have now been taken away, and you're increasing the pool of people that have particular knowledge or experience or whatever into, okay, I could buy that. I might be able to buy that. But then you're going to have to talk about seeing themselves in the management. You're going to have to talk about the homogenous nature of how all the leadership looks the same. That's no.
That isn't to suggest this has always been successful to this point. We think there are some areas that need some further thought and study.
Like?
But to be sure, in the long history of this, it does suggest there has been progress in the post sort of Cold War, post 9/11 world.
Until you show me, like, this is how things were, this is how things are, and this is how we want them to be, I have practically no idea what you're talking about.
In 2019, the National Intelligence Strategy emphasized building a diverse workforce and instructed the IC to forge and retain just such a workforce. So you see this within the National Intelligence Strategy. In 2020, you see the House Permanent...
Okay, wait. You're not even reading this. The IC to, quote, forge and retain a diverse, inclusive, and expert workforce to address enduring and emerging requirements and enable mission success. Expert. That one makes sense. What do you mean inclusive? What do you mean diverse? Because I would hope the people, I know, big wish on my part, I would hope the people in charge of our national defense and national security and national intelligence were all experts in their fields. Shouldn't that be the first and foremost priority? Shouldn't it?
Select Committee on Intelligence, or as many call it, HIPSI, reiterate that diversity and inclusion is a mission critical priority.
Yeah.
So not only are you seeing this from the White House and leaders within the IC, you're also seeing this from Congress.
Yeah, wow.
So codifying this as a priority central to the mission is a significant milestone that is, in many respects, very different from that Cold War and immediate post-Cold War era.
So again, prior to 2007, it was not considered important by the intelligence community to bring in people of various cultures, backgrounds, linguistics abilities, expertise into the intelligence community apparatus in order to improve outcomes. Prior to 2007, that was never considered important. Okay.
And indeed, last March, Deanna Haynes emphasized we must also identify policies and practices that disadvantaged and underserved communities experience, and we must ensure equity considerations are applied.
Okay, what is an equity consideration? What does that mean to you in the intelligence community?
Stressing accountability and that this is a mission imperative within the IC.
Yeah, imperative.
And importantly, data-driven approaches can help us with accountability, oversight, and ensure that we are executing this priority in the IC.
Data-driven approaches. That wouldn't be corporate speak for quotas, would it? Because I've seen that just recently, I believe, in that Department of Defense report on contracts. What do you mean by data-driven approaches?
So I'd like to turn the floor over now to Lindsay, who's going to walk us through sort of a brief history of IC DEI initiatives that we found in our research. I think it's worth noting it's not necessarily everything that has ever been done, but certainly publicly known.
Okay, so it's cherry-picked stuff. All right. Just as a note, we're coming up in about 10 minutes on my usual hour and a half limit. I'm still going to stick to that. I might do a part 2 on this because we've only done basically introductions so far, and I remain curious. So there might be a part 2.
And we've been made aware of in the past 70 plus years. So Lindsay, over to you, and you let me know when you want me to move forward.
Actually, you know what? This is a good place to stop because this is a section break for them. And if I want to come back to this, I know exactly where to begin. So tell you what, guys, sorry for the fake out. I'm going to call it here as far as this goes. And since everything prior to this was basically just a tease, I'm going to do a part 2, maybe for next Sunday. We'll see. But even though the regular presentation might be over with, we still have one thing to deal with before the show concludes, and that is the wheel. The spin that wheel for the next TED Excellence. Let me pull that up here. Let's see if this works. Does this work? That doesn't quite work. Can I make this? Well, you can still see. Okay, so there you go. I can't reframe the screen, but you can see that the wheel is going. And so if you can zoom in on there, you can see the text. But let me read off the nominees for next week's TED Excellence from the various contributors. All right, so from Mike R., do you speak feminism? I have an inkling to put like a Pulp Fiction thumbnail up if we get that one. Keeverdam, what we get wrong about the racial wealth gap. And I just did something on the racial wealth gap last Sunday's stream. I don't think we haven't done one recently on a TEDx, I don't believe. Jamie Melquist, the collared dollar, black food systems matter. Swirl Blue, bringing accountability to museums. Miranda. Oh, sorry, museum. That's not Miranda Roberts is the speaker. Bringing accountability to museums. Okay. And lastly, from Chicago Mike. Oh, wait. No, I don't have the, hold on. That's not lastly. I had two versions of the thing open. Sorry, one second. There it is. Okay. Chicago Mike, how diversity in medical illustration can improve healthcare. And lastly, from Bridget, the math and magic of origami. So we have 6 options that were put up there. If someone's posted something else since early this morning, I'm sorry, you missed the window. And so now I will spin the wheel to find out what will be our next TED Excellence. Here we go. And the winner is the math and magic of origami. Okay, well, that should be that'll be probably one of the most pleasant TEDx's I ever do. Yes, Bridget, the math and magic of origami. All right. I'm going to have to find a wingman for that one. I think that'll be fun. I'm not quite sure. We'll figure that out between now and next week. So next week's TED Excellence, everyone, will be the math and magic of origami as given to us by Bridget. Congratulations, Bridget. And we'll see how that goes. Again, this is entirely an experiment. I'm not going to do it more than maybe once a month or something, and we'll see how this goes. But I got 6 entries, so, there you go. Anyway, everybody, yeah, I'm going to do a part 2 on this. I'm assuming I will do it next Sunday, but I have to check on if I'm doing family stuff next Sunday. I'm not quite sure. I'll find out. And then I'll follow up on this because I am curious to know what they decide to highlight as the initiatives and policies and such that either needed to be changed or needed to be implemented specifically. Because the things that the speakers were talking about at the top, they were very much in summary. They were decidedly abstract in places. So to find out what this paper that they're all talking about recommended have happen, I guess we'll have to look at that the next time. But with that, everyone, I'm going to call it here. Thank you so much for joining me. I definitely did not expect to look into the intelligence community insofar as DEI was concerned. I'll take a couple of comments here before I go. Keeverdam, doing anything for Easter today? Nope. I'm not particularly religious, so nope. And Data Wasteland, hear about the origami porn channel? It was called Pay-Per-View. Thank you, Data. Thank you so much. And either way, Bridget says, it's a good talk. Want me on? I don't know. I mean, you've already seen it. I mean, you're gonna complete all the sentences for him or something? We'll be in touch. Zap me post me at Twitter or something, and we'll talk if things work out for next Thursday. All right, everybody. Hope you all enjoyed that. Hope you all learned something. We'll probably learn more as things go forward. If you'd like to hear more from me, well, of course, you can find me here next Thursday at 6 p.m. Pacific, 9 p.m. Eastern for the next episode of TED Excellence, in which we will look at the math and magic of origami. Also, Wednesday, I should mention, at some point in the morning, unless something derails me, I'll be doing a review of Moon Knight Episode 4, the episode that supposedly is going to wow everybody with some big twist. Could the twist be better writing and better characters? I can only hope. But until then, everybody, again, thank you for being here. Moderators, thank you for keeping an eye on things. Even though everyone here is so well behaved, you have very little to do. Everybody who donated, thank you, as always, for your ridiculous generosity. And please, as well, again, take your attention to the top of the chat box, to the GoFundMes for Shady Grin, Angry Illinoisian, and his kitten. If you have a spare buck or two, I know they would appreciate it as well. Everybody have a good rest of your Sunday, good rest of your weekend, a happy Easter, and please be safe and well. If you are not well, please get well soon, and I'll see you on the next one. Take care. Bye-bye.